Welcome to the Customer Success webinar series brought to you by ClientSuccess. I'm Jaron Stevens. I'm the Director of Customer Success at ClientSuccess, and we're broadcasting live to you from the beautiful base of the mountains of the Silicon Slopes in Utah, here in the US. ClientSuccess is a customer success platform that empowers B2B SaaS companies to proactively manage post-sales customer relationships and maximize customer retention. And of course, growth by measuring all aspects of the customer relationship, which also includes health and providing insight to drive a culture of customer success. Our very most greatest passion is stated in our mission statement, was actually building relationships that last. So today's webinar topic is focused on outcome-based customer success, moving past adoption. And we're absolutely thrilled to have Paul Henderson joining us from the great city of Sydney, Australia, as our special guest presenter. Paul is the founder of Outcome Leaders, a consulting firm helping technology vendors to achieve passionate customers through enabling the customer's business outcomes. Paul's also an author of 2 different books. And the name of those books are The Chief Capability Officer, which is about the internal use of outcomes in business, and then also the second book he's written is called The Outcome Generation, and he's going to do some reference to both of these books during the presentation. Now, just so you know, during the webinar, we encourage you to use both the Q&A and the chat features to submit your questions. Paul will answer some of those questions during the presentation, and then we'll save some of the questions for a broader Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We are also recording the webinar today, and we'll send each of you a copy on the recorded webinar later this week. So with no further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Paul Henderson. Paul, we're excited to hear from you.
Jaron, thanks very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you guys. So let's talk about outcome-based customer success and this idea of moving past adoption. Perhaps before I dive into it, a little more context for how this whole thing came about. So my last
Paul,
role...
very quickly, are you sharing your screen right now? Actually, not.
I'm not.
Okay.
That's why we're... That will certainly make things easier for everybody, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Let's get that back into presentation mode. Okay, so by way of some context on all of this, a bit of background as to how this whole thing came about. So my last role before founding Outcome Leaders was running the Asia Pacific region for an enterprise software company, ERP. We competed with SAP, Oracle, those sort of companies. I had about 200 staff across 9 countries, supporting 800 or so enterprise customers. In the last 5 years I was there, 2 things happened. The first is we changed from being just an on-premise vendor to a cloud vendor, with all the fun that involved. And the second was I made the decision that in the Asia Pacific region, we needed an outcomes approach to engaging with customers. So we designed and ran in the region an outcome program for over 5 years across the whole of the region. So with all of the diverse cultures and businesses and economic conditions across Asia Pacific, we ran it across all of that. You already mentioned I wrote 2 books. I get asked the question sometimes, why? At the end of the 5 years of running that outcome program, I realized 2 things. First, that the conditions that had prompted me to use an outcomes approach to customer engagement and the challenges that were involved were probably being experienced by other tech vendors. And having done it for over 5 years, I thought, you know, perhaps I'm able to help. The other thing I found, I actually really cared about this. I don't think it's okay that tech vendors sell products and services to customers who pay quite a lot of money for that, and the customers don't get a great outcome. So it felt to me like that's something I should try and do something about. What I'm trying to do, really what I'm looking for is people who have decided that their organization needs to move to an outcome-based approach and would like some help. So I'd like to find those people and I'd like to help them. So Customer success, the background, everybody I'm sure on the call will know this, but just to position, it really got started with subscription pricing. Vendors like the one I worked for who moved from on-premise to cloud realized that if the customer didn't feel they'd had success, it affected our revenues. And so customer success was born. We look at the chart on the right-hand side, then the yellow line is what we would hope would happen with revenue. But if the customer didn't feel like they had success, often it was the white line, flat and then down and even cancelled. We addressed that as a community in customer success by focusing on adoption. We wanted to reduce churn and provide opportunities for expansion, upsell and cross-sell. I think that probably most people on this on the webinar would agree that adoption and customer success aren't the same thing. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more on the call today. So 2 questions to address. What is true customer success and what should you do about it? So the book is called The Outcome Generation. It describes a new generation of vendors, many of them existing, some of them new, who have adopted seriously an outcome-based approach. And all of the vendors that are on this slide are companies that are members of the outcome generation. So this is happening in a very serious way. These companies are strong and leading companies. And it suggests that it's something the entire industry is now moving towards or will be. But the word outcome is something that means different things to different people. So we'll start by giving some context to this. What sort of outcomes are we talking about here? Whenever somebody buys something, there is an outcome that they want to achieve. Right? So if we buy a hamburger, probably we want to be full. We buy a movie ticket or a cinema ticket, then we'd like to be entertained. Buy a sports car, a fairly good chance we'd like to stand out. We'd like to be noticed. In the technology space, there are 2 different types of outcomes that we deal with. The first is a product outcome, which is the direct benefit of using your products and services that we provide. The second in the book we've called the success outcome. This is the bigger outcome that the customer is actually trying to achieve that our products and services contribute to. So the relationship between them looks like this. The yellow circle is the success outcome, the bigger thing the customer is actually trying to achieve. The black circle is the product outcome. That's our contribution to creating that outcome for the customer. So just to highlight the difference between those 2, let me give you a couple of non-tech examples. If you went to a hardware store and bought a drill bit, the customer, the success guy there, the hardware store manager, would know that you didn't want to own a drill bit. What you wanted to do was drill a hole in the wall. You paid for the drill, you used it, the direct benefit of using it, there was a hole in the wall. That's a product outcome. But that's not what success looks like for us. What we really want to do is hang that picture that we've just had framed. When we can step back and go, great, I did that, I got that picture up on the wall, then we've enjoyed a success outcome. Similarly, if we go to a restaurant, the restaurant owner might think, well, my job is to provide great food and service. And they're right, they must do that. We pay for the food and service. If we enjoy that, we've had a product outcome. But that's not the real reason we go to a restaurant. We go for a great night out with family or friends. If we have a great night out with family and friends, we've enjoyed the success outcome. So why is that distinction important? If we go to the restaurant and we didn't have a fun night, perhaps we were out with a group and a couple of people argued, or there was someone noisy on the table next to us, even if the food and service was fine, we probably won't go back to that restaurant. It has a bad connotation for us now. There are lots of other good restaurants we can choose. If we bought the drill bit, drilled the hole in the wall, we step back, ready to admire our handiwork with the picture now up, and we say, it looks terrible, it's in the wrong place. Next time, we may not go to the hardware store and buy anything from them. We might hire a handyman. So both of those examples illustrate a situation where the product outcome was achieved, but the success outcome wasn't, and as a result, the vendor lost future revenue. And the core idea of the book is that's exactly what happens in the technology space. So the concept is the amount a customer spends next time is driven by the success they have this time, and it's the success outcome that determines that, not the product outcome. So just getting our product working isn't enough. Our task as a vendor is to do everything that we can to ensure the customer achieves the success outcome, because that's what they consider success to be, and that also affects our revenue. So we're going to do some polls as we go through today, and Jaron, I think we've got an opportunity for the first one here.
We do. All right, there's the first poll, which we'd like to know what the extent is that any of your companies is using a concept similar to success outcomes to engage with customers. We here at ClientSuccess, we actually use what we call success criteria versus outcomes. That's our mode. That's what we call them. Some good responses here, as you can see. Paul, okay. We'll run it here for about 30 seconds. All right. Let's take a look. So there's your responses there, Paul. Looks like we have, on a scale of 1 not, 10 being a lot, spread fairly evenly. We look at about an 8, where they're not a lot are doing it.
Okay. I'm actually having some difficulty seeing the chat
responses.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
There we go. You see the poll responses? Are you able to see that?
Yeah, I can. So a fairly even distribution. So good to see that some organizations are already using concepts like this. It's very pleasing to see.
Very good.
Yep. Okay. Thanks,
Jasper,
everybody.
just very quick, Jasper, were you able to see that? Just want to make sure that all the attendees can see that now. Okay, and if you can see it, shows all 0. Okay, very good. Some can see it. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. All right, so let's talk about the elements of a success outcome. What are we thinking about that yellow circle looks like? A definition of a success outcome before we get started on that, an ongoing business result that top management of a customer regard as success. So let me break that down. First of all, it's an ongoing business result. So it's not a one-off event. What we're trying to do is create a new to-be state for our customer, something that persists and lasts. So it's ongoing. It's a state that the top management would say, yep, I recognize that. I can see that's an important thing for our business. And we want that. And then when it's achieved, that the people who were responsible for achieving it basically get a pat on the back. Well done, guys. So we can think about the elements as something of a jigsaw puzzle. So there's a whole lot of things that have to be gotten right, a lot of pieces of the puzzle that the customer has to find in order to achieve that success outcome that they're after. As vendors, we do a lot of it. So we provide a lot of the equipment, the software, the training, and so on that goes with it. But there are other things that the customer typically would take care of themselves. If we provide our elements of this, if we deliver our product outcome, then the customer begins to see the picture. The success outcome begins to appear. But in order for the customer to see the whole picture, they need all of the puzzle pieces. All of those things have to be right in order for the success outcome to be achieved. And so that changes things for us. If we subscribe to the idea that the success outcome is the thing that determines our future revenue, then we now have a vested interest in making sure that all of those other elements, all of the puzzle pieces are found and put in place by the customer. So how do we do that? So this yellow area there, we call the outcome gap. So this is the difference between the black circle and the yellow circle. So all the yellow is stuff that the customer would typically look after themselves, and that is an outcome gap. So as a vendor, we don't do all those things. How could we help? What are the things that we might do that would allow that outcome gap to be bridged? Well, we might find some partners who can do some of these things, and that might take care of a couple of puzzle pieces. We might spend some time and energy and develop some advice and guidance or some tools and methodologies that the customers can use. So for example, in governance and change management, those are things that we can't do for the customer, but we could give them some tools or some advice and guidance that would help them do a better job on that. And finally, this is an opportunity for us to develop some new products and services. The fact that there are those puzzle pieces that are not taken care of might create an opportunity for us to create both products and services, which also creates revenue for us. Over time, and it's important that this is something that we're not trying to do up front. This is not suddenly we're going to do all of this. But over time, we want to assemble a bundle that addresses as much of the success outcome as we can. All right. So the conversation so far has been a little bit negative. It's about avoiding a loss of revenue. What about the more positive aspects of a success outcome approach? What does it do for us? So let's spend a few minutes and talk about the positive aspects of this. First of all, let's consider where our growth comes from and how we can improve it. So we wish that our customers all loved us. For most vendors, that's not the case. There is something of a normal distribution going on. So unsadly, we have some customers down the bottom end that cold towards us. We definitely have some customers that are passionate about us, that really care about working with us. And we probably have quite a lot of customers that are pretty neutral about us. They think we're okay. They're happy to continue working with us. They're probably not proactive advocates, but they'll continue on their relationship with us. And that reflects where our growth comes from. So at the bottom end, this is typically where our voluntary churn comes from. At the top end, this is where our higher growth comes from. These are customers who buy the new products and services when they come out, that are expanding their number of seats and so on. In the center, we are going to get growth, but it's typically organic growth. They're typically taking a minimalist approach in their spend with us. They're often resistant to the entreaties of our salespeople to buy more product from them, but they tick along, they carry on. What we'd like to do is see that red zone decrease in size, and of course the green zone to have a greater size. So a greater percentage of our customers are passionate about working with us. So how do we do that? How do we get more green customers in particular? Well, the first thing to recognize is that companies aren't passionate. It's not the customer or the company. It's actually people inside that are passionate about us. And often it's not many, sometimes only one, but that's enough for that organization to be considered a passionate customer. So how do we create passionate people? In my experience, it's almost always for a single reason. We helped create a business outcome that those people got credit for. Top management recognized it was a great business result. They got the recognition or the bonus or the promotion. Effectively, they became heroes and heroines in their own organization. And that reflected in them loving us. They are grateful for the role that we played in helping create them as heroes and heroines. And so that's a great opportunity for us with success outcomes. If we can enable a success outcome that is an ongoing business result that top management regard as success, that has the potential to turn these people into heroes and heroines. Another challenge that many of us in the tech space face is engaging across the whole buying cycle. So this is just an example of a typical buying cycle for a customer. It starts with a senior executive deciding that some aspect of results are just not good enough. They need to be improved. They will look at the problems or roadblocks, what's stopping them from achieving the results that they'd like. They'll then go on and consider requirements, the high-level approach to how they're going to solve this. Is this an IT solve? Is it a process issue that needs to be solved? Is it an HR people issue? If they decide that it's IT, then they'll move into evaluation phase 1, which is considering vendors that might do the job for them. In phase 2, they've made a shortlist and they're now considering those shortlisted vendors. They make a selection and then make a purchase. If you've read the Challenger Sales series, the authors there from CEB, now Gartner, talk about engagement with vendors occurring 57% of the way through the buying cycle. So that green star represents when typically an engagement would start with a vendor or a number of vendors. The question the customer is trying to answer at that stage is, who are we going to choose? But 57% of the work has been done, and what they were considering is, what are we going to do? How are we going to get the results that we really want in a specific area of the business? Ideally, we would like to engage across all steps of the buying cycle, because decisions are being made that can have a severe impact on whether or not revenue comes to us, whether they buy anything from us. So they might decide that results are okay, they don't need to do anything. Or they might decide that the kind of problems are not problems that we solve. Or they might decide that it's not an IT issue at all. Maybe we'd be better off spending money somewhere else. So we'd like to influence those decisions, because that has the potential to create greater revenue for us. So if we're going to influence at that stage, the customer is focused on results. If we turn up and we talk about product, then they're going to dismiss us, because they're not thinking about product at this stage. That's not what's on their mind. What they're thinking about is the results, the outcomes that they need to try and get to. Success outcomes, and having the ability to talk about success outcomes, to even provide insight about success outcomes, is the entree. That gets you into that first 57% and helps you engage and genuinely add value to the customer when they're going through their consideration of what they're going to do. The next element of this then is at what level we engage. So if we break the organization, the customer, down into 3 levels, executive, middle, and functional level, and separate line of business from IT. The functional level in line of business, people are considering what our software will do for them, the features and functions, and they're the people who are going to use it, so that's understandable. At middle management, they're concerned with operational issues. How are we going to make this work? What are the processes, the systems, the people skills that we need? At the executive level, they're concerned about what the business results are going to be. What are the outcomes that are going to occur? If we go to an executive level and we talk about operational issues, or we talk about features and functions, they are going to ask us to go down to the level in the organization that deals with that quite reasonably. If we're going to engage at the executive level, we have to talk about the stuff that they're interested in. So success outcomes, and again, being able to provide insight on success outcomes is a great way to get to that executive level and stay there. And the same these days is true of IT, that CIOs, particularly of larger organizations, are typically very business-oriented people now, and they're under a lot of pressure to deliver business outcomes and show the value in business outcomes that they create for their own organization. And so if we turn up to talk to a CIO who is a business-oriented person, and we talk about operational or features and functions, we will get sent down to the level that deals with that. So in both cases, success outcomes are a way for us to get to the executive level and stay there. What about winning deals? Particularly new business or new logo deals. So we have good competitors, right? Everybody in the tech space does. And our competitors have got good product. They've probably got good people. They've got some case studies, some success that they've had in the past. They may be able to do an ROI analysis for the customer. And the customer loves all that stuff. And that's kind of how they're used to seeing vendors turn up and try and sell to them. If we turn up, however, and we talk about a success outcome, a business outcome that they actually really care about, because remember, they actually don't care about our products at all. Our products are a means to an end. If we talk about the success outcome and we show that we have an understanding of the entire jigsaw puzzle that they are having to put together, all of the elements, then we stand out. We look different and better than any of our competition. And there's another element to this. We not only look different and better, we create a much stronger emotional bond because we're talking about something the customer actually cares about. And selling is first and foremost an emotional game. Customers make an emotional decision first and then they rationalize it. So talking about the success outcome creates a stronger emotional bond, then that increases our chances of winning the business. That same concept also applies to customer retention. So we have a customer, we've helped them achieve a success outcome. They've got the bonus or the promotion or the internal recognition. They're the heroes and heroines. If a competitor comes along who has a better product than us, we still may not lose that account if that competitor can't show that they can enable the success outcome in an equal or better way than us. So even if we don't have the best product, if we're enabling the success outcome, we create that stronger loyalty and stickiness, and that improves our customer retention. Success outcomes also change the way that we engage with customers. So traditionally, if we're implementing software, then the customer kind of expects us to turn up and get the software working for them. And if it fails for some reason, they often want to hold us accountable for that. If we are working with the customer jointly to enable a success outcome, the picture's different. The customer must do some stuff themselves. And we can show them that. We can educate them about that. And so it changes the accountability. Now it is genuinely a joint project. And the ongoing improvement of that success outcome is a joint engagement. We can add value, they can add value, we do it together. And it genuinely changes how the customer views our role in their engagement. A really positive byproduct almost of this approach is the employee experience. Today, we might be focused on getting products in, getting them working, getting them adopted. And that's a good thing. We hope that by getting our products adopted, the customer will get some value out of them. They'll get some real benefit. If, however, we focus on the success outcome, the bigger business outcome, and we're genuinely working with the customer to try and help them get to all of that, it gives our own staff a greater sense of purpose. They're doing something bigger for the customer than just enabling a product to be used, the adoption side. It also creates some new career opportunities. So in the book, I talk about a job called a success consultant. So a consultant who understands everything about achieving the yellow circle, the success outcome, not just focused on the black circle. In fact, in the last organization, when we ran our outcomes program, we had success consultants who actually didn't know the product. They weren't experts. They knew what it did so that they made recommendations that we were able to address, but they were not experts in how the product worked. They were experts in how to achieve the success outcome. Customers loved those consultants, and we charged a lot of money for their time. They were always backed up with work. They always had more work than they could deal with. Then the final idea is that a success outcome provides a wonderful lens for looking at your customers and seeing what new products and services you're able to create. So we talked about one idea, the bridging the outcome gap. In the book, there are 9 different models that you can use to generate ideas for growth and a method for engineering that back to something practical. So to summarize the positive aspects of adopting a success outcome approach to customer success, we're going to create more passionate customers. We're going to create those heroes and heroines, and they're going to turn into passionate customers for us. We're going to get to the executive level, and we're going to be able to stay there. When we're competing for business, we're going to stand out. We're going to look different and better than our competition and create that stronger emotional bond. Because we're talking about success outcomes, we're going to be able to influence the whole buying cycle. We're going to engage early and stay engaged through that entire cycle. Creating greater customer retention and loyalty is part of it as well, as is a move to much more of a joint engagement, a positive effect on employee experience, and an opportunity for new products and services with a lens that helps gives context for the decisions that we'll make. Okay, an opportunity for another poll. Jaron.
So I have to apologize, Paul. Something has happened with the computer on which I am hosting this webinar. So while you can hear me, I am not able to launch Another
Okay.
poll. So I apologize. We're going to have to skip over. We had one more poll after this, so we're going to have to skip over the polls and continue with the awesome presentation you're giving us.
All right, no problem. Okay, a couple of other comments. In doing the research for the book, I found something pretty interesting. If we map out the life cycle across the top of this chart, and we map the roles that are involved in customer-facing engagement down the left-hand side, I found that almost every vendor that I spoke to was doing a mix. There was some features and functions type activity going on. There was quite a lot of solution selling, solution engagement going on. But nearly every vendor that I spoke to was already doing some elements that were very outcome focused. Some individuals in the organization just got the idea of outcomes and almost of their own accord were doing something about it. So what we're trying to do with outcome-based customer success, OCS, we're trying to move from CS to OCS. What we're trying to do with that move to OCS is just get everybody in the organization and every step of our life cycle aligned around a single idea, that is enabling the success outcome. So everyone in the organization knows what that success outcome is. They know that that's our purpose as a vendor, and they're all aligned. All of our activities are aligned about doing that. And that really does get our organization aligned. The other comment I'd make is this is not a thing to try and do big bang. This actually takes a little time. We're going to progressively move from a small amount of outcome-based activity to a bit more to some more, and eventually we're going to get our organization aligned around this idea of enabling success outcomes for our customers. It does take a little time. It's an evolution, not a revolution. Okay, so the title of the webinar is Moving Past Adoption. So are we saying now adoption is not important? The opposite. It is still critical. We still have to get this right. If the customer doesn't use our products, they won't achieve their success outcome because we're critical to the customer achieving their success outcome. It would be a bit like someone buying a drill bit at the hardware store, putting on a shelf and never using it. That picture is not ever going up on the wall. Or going to a restaurant and for some odd reason not eating the food. We are certainly not going to have had a great night at the restaurant if that happens. So we need our customers to use our product, and we want to stay focused in a way that ensures they do that and they grow their use of the product. So we need to be monitoring it. We want to be tracking and assisting with it. But we want to automate as much of that as we possibly can. So we want the automated tracking and reporting. We want some automated actions, like, for example, guidance tools. WalkMe is just one example. Pop-up things that suggest to a customer, if you're in this place, you could do this. Here's the way that you deal with this. Or if you can see customers are not using your software, you've got some automated systems that are tracking it and sending emails saying, we notice you're not using the software. Anything we can help you with? Or with advanced features, because we'd like our customers to use the advanced features. Again, automate that. Hey, we see, here's an opportunity for you. We see you're not using this feature. Did you know what it does? Did you know how it could help you? If we can automate as much of that as we can, then that gives us an opportunity with the resources we have to put more energy, more focus on enabling the success outcome, the big thing that really matters to the customer. And an interesting thing happens. A byproduct of focusing on outcomes is greater adoption. Because the customer is getting the business results they want more of that. And so they're really happy to use more of our product. And when we come along with cross-sell or and upsell opportunities, yeah, they're interested. They're going to engage with us on that. Okay, so what about your success outcome? How would you choose a success outcome? So let's dive in a little more on that. So a success outcome describes a new to-be state. So it's the ongoing business result. That's a new to-be state, a new level of performance that the customer now has. It's, if you bought the hamburger, you're full. If you bought the movie ticket, you're entertained. You bought the sports car, a good chance you noticed. It's a new to-be state for us. It actually has to resonate for the customer. It has to be significant and important to them. They have to say, yes, that's something I recognize and something that I want. And they're going to be feeling great when it's actually achieved. We also need to be significant for it. So if the black circle is our product outcome and we say the thing that we help the customer with is this big yellow circle, we're really not very significant for that. If the customer needs help achieving the success outcome, the yellow circle, they're probably not going to come to us. So the idea of success outcomes is that they nest. So a bigger outcome is achieved by a series of smaller outcomes, and they're in turn achieved by smaller outcomes. We're going to pick a success outcome for which we are the most significant external provider. So if the customer needs help with that outcome, they are going to come to us. And we're going to show the customer why that success outcome should be important to them. So we want them to believe that we're significant for that success outcome and that that success outcome is significant to them. We call that the significance squared test. Both elements need to be passed. A lot of vendors have complex businesses. You may have multiple lines of business. You will establish a success outcome for each line of business. They are typically separate. So we talked about this idea of the nesting, that there's a hierarchy almost of outcomes. The success outcome, this is your guiding light. This is almost like your big, hairy, audacious goal. It's the big thing that you're going to do for the customer. And it provides a single message that you're talking to customers about. When you're asked what you do, this is the outcome that we create for customers. It's a message for sales and marketing at a general level. But it's made up of those lower level outcomes, what we call contributing outcomes. And when we're getting started with an OCS approach, then we can concentrate on those contributing outcomes. They're smaller, they're easier to deal with. They're also something that we can package up to sell. So one of the things about sales organizations in the technology space is that they're typically very adept at selling product. That's their background, that's their specialization. Selling a concept like an outcome can sometimes be a little challenging. So what we do is put together a contributing outcome into a bundle. We get the jigsaw puzzle. Think about that jigsaw puzzle. We put as much of those pieces together as we can, and we put a price on that. And the sales organization can then go out proactively to customers and say, is this an outcome that you would like to create in your business? Find those organizations who want that outcome, and now we have a bundle that we can sell to them. So a much more natural way for our existing sales organization to sell outcomes. They can still pitch the success outcome, the big thing that we're helping with, but that's made up by achieving a series of smaller contributing outcomes. All right, so we've talked about this idea of outcomes and what we're going to try and do for our customers. How are we going to get there? What kind of life cycle might we be able to use? And we can use the concept of outcomes to drive our customer life cycle. So let's dive in and look at that. Three main elements of a life cycle. There's more, but we're going to consider three. There's the customer's journey. So what do they go through from the time they start thinking, my results need to get better, to the time that that success outcome is achieved and maintained over time. We're going to introduce an outcome cycle. This is the outcome that we want to achieve as we engage at every step along the customer's journey. And then we're going to consider the ideal engagement cycle. So how are we going to achieve the outcome at each of those steps? So let's, instead of looking at the entire journey, for the sake of time, let's just look at a subset and we'll look at the buying cycle. So the first thing we'll do is we'll map out the customer's buying cycle. I gave you an example of a typical one earlier. That may fit your organization and your customers. You may have a different set of customers and they buy in a different way. Be clear about that. We need to know what our customers are going through and be able then later to map to that. We're then going to map that outcome cycle. So we're going to say at each step, what do we want to achieve? Now, ideally, because we're moving to more of a joint engagement with our customers, it's an outcome the customer also wants. But it's for us, first of all, we need to make sure that we're clear about what we want, what we need to achieve in each of those buying cycle steps. And then we're going to map out how we're going to achieve that at each step. What's the engagement cycle that we're going to go through? We will typically create an engagement cycle for each of our segments. So, and we all segment in different ways. We may have a high touch, low touch, tech touch as an example. We've established the engagement cycle for the high touch segment. We want to do the same for low touch and tech touch. They're always different. We have to engage in different ways. Here's the interesting thing. The outcome cycle, the outcome that we want to achieve at every step of the customer's buying cycle is exactly the same for every segment. The execution will be different. So the way that we would, for example, if results was the first step in the customer buying cycle, the outcome we might want to achieve is influencing their decision about whether the results are okay or not. The outcome we want is they decide results need improvement. Then in a high touch customer, that might be achieved through a periodic business review. In our tech touch customers, we still want that outcome of the customer deciding that their results need to improve, but we can't afford to go and do an expensive periodic business review. So we might use some other tools. For example, we might send them some information in the tech touch customer segment of what's happening in their industry, some benchmarking information which might influence their decision, and without having to go and engage one-on-one, we can influence them to decide that their results need to be improved. So the outcome cycle remains the same in every segment. It's the execution that varies, but it gives us that consistency by having that outcome cycle. So we were going to do another poll, unfortunately.
And I sure wish that we could do a poll. We do have a couple of really good questions that we're going to ask at the end. So I appreciate the questions that come through so far. Just know that for those attendees, we will be answering. Those are some great questions. So
okay,
you ready for some good during the Q&A?
Okay, so just to wrap up that life cycle, we map the customer journey where we need to be clear about the outcome we want to achieve at each step. We map the engagement cycle, the ideal way we would like to engage with our customers. The outcome will be the same in every segment, but the execution will vary. And we actually want to drive our behavior. So this changes as well how we think about how our staff go and work. If they're clear about the outcome that they're trying to achieve, we can give them some latitude now. Instead of saying, here's a process, you must follow the process in this step, you can say, here's the outcome. As long as you achieve that outcome in a professional way, if you can find some better ways of achieving the outcome, yeah, please help us. So it creates innovation amongst our people and also gives them the latitude to be able to do things a little differently if they run into a slightly different customer situation. So it has a very positive effect on our staff as well. Okay, let me try and now wrap up what we've just talked about, and then we'll move on to some of those excellent questions. The success outcome approach. First of all, the outcome generation is a real thing. It's happening. Some serious companies are going down and committing to an outcomes-based approach. They're all doing it differently. Some are using concepts a bit like success outcomes. Some are tackling it different ways, but they're committing to this idea that outcomes need to be central to the way that they engage. We introduced the idea of success outcomes and product outcomes, that we contribute to the success outcome. We're critical, but we're not enough. There are other things. And we introduced this idea of the puzzle that the customer needs to solve in order to be able to achieve that outcome, and that we need to be interested in helping them achieve all of those things, to find all of the pieces of the puzzle for the customer so that they achieve the success outcome, because the success they have this time drives the amount they spend with us next time. We talked about the success outcome that you would choose, that these nest, that there's a hierarchy of them. We want to choose an outcome to serve for which we are the greatest or the most significant external provider, and we want it to be significant to the customer. We talked about that hierarchy. The success outcome is our guiding light. This is the big thing that we do, and it's made up of smaller contributing outcomes, and they're great things to concentrate on early in our journey towards OCS and great things to package up and sell. And then we talked about the journey, an outcome-driven journey, with the customer journey mapped and clear to us, the outcome cycle defined, which remains consistent, and then a cycle, an engagement cycle for each of our segments. So, a lot in that. How would you proceed if you decided that, yep, this is something that we're going to do, we should do? How would you go about doing this? The first thing is, this typically takes someone in the organization, in your organization, deciding to become an outcome leader. So we named our company Outcome Leaders, but actually we don't see that that's our role. We see that there are people in vendors everywhere across the world who are realizing that their organization needs to move to an outcome-based approach, to OCS, and they're going to show the way. And the question really is, if not you, then who? So as I mentioned at the start, if that's you, if you're an outcome leader or you want to be an outcome leader, you're absolutely the person that we want to help. What would you do in your organization? The first thing is to get some other people interested. So your fellow executives and your customers or customer success professionals, if you're just going to do it within the CS organization, need to be on board. We need to first of all get them interested. You don't have to convince them up front, just get them interested. How we can help you with that, on our website, there's a couple of short videos, about 15 minutes worth, which captures some of the stuff that we've just talked about on this webinar that you can have other people view. If they're interested, if they go, yeah, this is looking interesting, then increase their interest level by getting them a bit educated. Learn more about the way OCS works. So again, on the website, we can help you with that. There's some online tuition, videos, exercises, a calculator, about 1.5 to 2 hours worth of content. If you've got people, if they're on board, then the next thing you need to do is plan how OCS would work in your organization. Those things that we talked about, what your success outcome would be, what your life cycle would look like. Again, if you want some help with that, we run 2-day outcome workshops. We can do them one-on-one with companies. We're also doing them publicly. So as an aside, I'll be in the UK at the end of October and in the US in the first half of November, running public workshops. Details, the landing page will be up in the next day or two. So if it's not there when you go and visit, if you're interested in this, it will be in the next couple of days. If, by the way, there's not one in your area and you're interested, please reach out to me. We may be able to set something up. Once you've decided in principle how it's going to work, you've worked out a plan, then the next thing is to do a pilot. And we would suggest you don't try and do this big bang. This is an evolution. So pick some people in your organization who are on board with it and get them engaged. Pick some customers who like the idea of it after you've gone and pitched it to them and get them involved in it. If you use partners and they're part of your ecosystem, again, pick the willing ones and trial it. See how it works for you. Learn from it and then progressively roll it out as you have success. And then finally, please reach out to me. My email is there. Our website is outcomeleaders.com. We're publishing a lot of content every week. We're doing one or more videos a couple of times a month. There's an article on this stuff. If you're interested in getting that, drop me a note at that email address. We'll add you to our list and we'll send you a summary of the content that is published every week. So
a quick question for you, Paul, about your workshops. Someone wanted to know where those workshops are going to be held in the U.S. Is there an easier way? Is it on your website that they can go and see where they'll be held, or is it just a certain place you can rattle off real quick?
Yes, I can. So at the moment, we're scheduled for Indianapolis, San Diego, and San Francisco. But if there are, and typically these workshops are groups of 5 or 6 companies. So I'm trying to keep them relatively small. If you, any city, frankly, where there's 5 or 6 companies that would like to do this, I'm happy to come and visit. I've been a visitor to the US for a couple of decades now, 4 to 6 times a year. I do like coming to America, so I would welcome the chance to come and spend more time there.
And we like having you, Paul. Come anytime.
Thanks, Joan. I appreciate that. All right. So that's our stuff. That's the concepts of OCS, outcome-based customer success. So, Jaron, you mentioned
Fantastic.
we have some questions.
We do have some questions. Yeah, thank you, Paul. And we have, just very quick, we have about 7 minutes left. So I want to get all of these questions in as we can, as there's some fantastic questions that have come across. So one of the questions a little bit ago in the presentation said that these seem like account retention. So essentially the success outcomes. Does the process hold true during the initial onboarding of the customers?
So the onboarding is different for different sorts of vendors. You know, if you've got a very complex product, then the onboarding is a full-blown implementation and a complex project. If the products are relatively simple, then the onboarding is a much faster and simpler process. Every step of the customer journey, every step of our engagement cycle, the central theme is we're trying to get the customer to achieve or to help them achieve the success outcome that they care about. So does it apply to onboarding? Yeah, it's part of it. We need to keep it in the back of our mind. Of course, if onboarding is about getting the product set up, getting it working, getting initial users, getting their user addresses loaded up and all of that sort of stuff, then that's what we're doing. But in the back of our minds, we're always focused on, we've got to make sure that this is going to help get that success outcome.
Yeah, and you know, there's another great question that piggybacks off of that one a little bit about implementation as well. And she asked that she'd like to better understand how you articulate the value delivered by a technology, right? So the realization of a success outcome 3 years after implementation. So the success outcomes and the state of the KPIs, they weren't captured prior to the implementation. So how do you articulate that value if you didn't originally capture during that onboarding process?
That's a tough one. It's a very good question. Mm-hmm. The value side of things changes. So what we typically attempt to do is show the value of our product outcome. So we show the direct value of our products and services. The value of the success outcome for an organization is typically greater. One of the ways we might be able to do it, and by the way, if we are seen as critical to the success outcome and the success outcome is achieved, the value of the product is immaterial. The value of the success outcome becomes the important thing. It may be that that success outcome is something that they have measured over time. So, for example, if we're a marketing automation company and we've chosen the value of pipeline as something that we help them with, they probably have records that show over the last 3 to 5 years what the value of their pipeline is. So if we can show that we were critical to them achieving the pipeline and they can track the pipeline, that's the value. That's the kind of value we can show that we have delivered. Otherwise, though, you know, it can be tough. If we haven't done some benchmarking, put some stakes in the ground, you know, at the time we started out, then yeah, it can be more difficult to show the kind of value that we have delivered.
Yep, that is tough if you don't start from the very beginning. So make sure that you have it as a part of your original onboarding process. I completely agree. We have a couple of bigger questions. I want to get both of these in, so I'll try to read these quickly so we can answer these. These are great questions. So this person says that this is excellent information and it helps to support my push for an annual success plan. So the question is, do you have suggestions for the actions that we can take when we can't meet our clients' intended outcomes? So they've tried everything to meet the customer's needs, but a proactive exit strategy seems to be the best way to step rather than frustrating them and waiting for them to break up with us. And what do you think about that, Paul?
You know, the idea of the ideal customer is something that I'm hearing a lot more about. And there are some people that are talking about that now, that we make decisions in the old days when we sold, for example, perpetual licenses. We really didn't consider all that much whether the customer was going to be successful or not. in the world of subscription pricing, we may not recover the cost that was involved in selling to before the first renewal. So it might take more than 1 year, for example, if we're on annual renewals, for the cost that as an organization, we expended in capturing that customer. So in the sales cycle, we need to be more cognizant of the likelihood of success. And I think that the question that was asked is a great one. If it's clear that a customer is not going to be successful with us, it's highly likely that we're spending more money trying to make that customer successful than we're actually getting in revenue. And if the chances of that customer ever being successful with us are small, then the sensible business decision would be to say, we're not meant for each other. We should part company and work out with the customer a mature and a sensible plan for parting company. No point having...
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very great point. And it's something that's really hard to do, especially when you have the blood of a success organization, right? We want to make our customers successful, come heck or high water, whatever it takes, we want them to be successful. But there is a key element of making sure that you have the right customers.
It is. And I wrote an article a couple of months ago called Recognize the Inflection Point. So knowing in your organization, what is the cost of acquiring new logo accounts, and when is the profit point? At what point in your relationship do you actually recover the money it cost you to sell, and therefore you're in profit on that customer? And for lots of organizations, it's past the first renewal. So if they don't renew the first time around, they weren't successful, then you lose money on that deal.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, and I apologize that we're out of time and I can't get to the rest of the questions, but Paul, is there a way that if people can reach out to you? I think you had your email address up there, and they're welcome to reach out, touch base, and ask some questions, and then you'll be able to follow up with them directly. Is that true?
Absolutely happy to do that. Right. And if there's so if people still want that question answered, please email it to me. I'll be really happy to respond to you. And if need be, if it's something that's easier to talk about, then let's do a call.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Paul. We really appreciate the very impactful insights that you delivered today, and we had quite a few comments that I didn't read them to you, but I want you to know that people are very grateful, and your content was very applicable in their customer success organizations today, and insightful. I expect you'll probably have a few people reaching out.
Great. So, thanks very much, Darren. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. So thank you to all who participated today in the webinar from around the globe. And as I mentioned previously, a recorded version of the webinar, we will email it out to you sometime next week. And wanted to let you know that ClientSuccess, also as a company, we're here to help. And we invite you to visit our website and to take advantage of a lot of the resources that we have available to you to build and scale your own customer success teams. And we also encourage you to request a demo of the customer success platform to see how we can empower you and your team to deliver a higher retention, grow expansion revenue, and also create more advocates of your own customers. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you on our next webinar series in just a few weeks. Have a great day, everybody.
Darren, you still there?
Yeah, my computer being frozen is not allowing me to even turn it off. So hold on a second. I'm going to actually have to force quit. So one moment, hold for a moment, and then I'll reach back out to you, Paul, if you'll hang on a second, okay?
Sure, happy to do that.
All right. Hey, Paul, can you tell me what your email address is again? We have a few that we want to respond over the...
It's PJH, as in Paul John Henderson, at outcomeleaders.com.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Okay, one moment. I think I'm going to have to